Hello, I have a quick note as the year end approaches. As some of you might know, I was fortunate enough to attend Cambridge University to study science and psychology, and I noticed at the end of many lectures, a small band of students would head to the front of the room, while most of us headed in the opposite direction out of the doors at the back. The gaggle at the front would be asking questions of the lecturer for a few minutes afterwards, clarifying key ideas, probing deeper. And the couple of friends I had who were in that group tended to go on to do exceptionally well in their exams. So to celebrate the end of the year and to give a little something back to our wonderful listeners this year, I'm holding a completely free live Ask Me Anything event. Your chance to head to the front of the virtual room and ask me anything you'd like to get under the skin of the ideas we talk about on the show that much more and help figure out how they apply to you. You can come along to the event even if you don't have a question to ask, by the way. Simply come along, listen to the questions others have at the front of the room and help internalise the messages that much more deeply. Get inspired by how others are levelling up their study strategies. Come along and hang out. It's completely free. We're live on Zoom webinar. No one's on audio or video except for me, obviously, though everyone can interact with me via the chat and ask any follow-up questions as we go along live, in addition to any pre-submitted questions we've had in advance. This is all happening Saturday, December 14th. It's at 2:30 p.m. UK time, GMT, which is 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I imagine we'll go for 45 minutes or so, depending on how many questions we have. It'd be lovely to see as many of you as possible there to celebrate the end of the year and to help you with any questions you've got in your studies. To register, again, completely free, head to examstudyexpert.com/AMA, as in Ask Me Anything, AMA. That's examstudyexpert.com/AMA. I hope to see you there. And now for today's episode.
Welcome to the Exam Study Expert podcast, helping you ace your exams at school and university through the psychology of high performance and the science of studying smarter, not harder. It's my pleasure to introduce your host, the Cambridge-trained memory psychologist and exam success coach, William Wadsworth.
Hello and welcome to the show. Today's episode is all about exam technique and the things you can do to give yourself the best possible chance of passing your exams. The episode is also my first venture into the genre of React content in a very respectful and collaborative kind of way with a creator I actually know in real life now somewhat and who I really want to honour. I'm not here to pour shade on her work. The bones of the episode today then is taken from what is the all-time most listened to episode from another podcast called The School Success Formula, created by the lovely and wise Lucy Parsons. Lucy is a Cambridge grad, former teacher turned academic coach, writer and podcaster. She ran the Life More Extraordinary website and School Success Formula podcast for a decade as her full-time job, and in that time worked with hundreds of young people and their families to help them achieve their academic goals. Lucy recently decided she wanted to do other things with her life, so I reached out to her to see what she was planning to do with the immense body of blog articles, podcast episodes, and videos on her YouTube channel that she had created over the years. And after chatting for a bit, we felt together that it would be a good win for everybody if I was to take over paying the hosting fees and so forth, which I was prepared to do, to keep the lights on for all of the above channels, and in so doing help keep the legacy of her published works and all the advice she's worked so hard to create alive. We felt it was a good win for everybody. Her existing followers and audience can continue to access her materials, and I'll probably cross-post some Exam Study Expert materials to her channels from time to time to help keep people discovering the Exam Study Expert podcast and world and all we have to offer, and keep that growing. If you're interested in a little bit more detail on what's happening behind the scenes and how I'm planning to curate Lucy's legacy on the different channels, the podcast, YouTube channel and so forth, do stick around at the end of today's episode and I'll give you a bit of a backstage update on all of that and a bit of juicy gossip on exactly what's going to happen and how it's all going to go down. One final quick thing before we dive into today's content. I know Lucy recently did a shout out to some of her long-time followers on her email list to check out this very show, the Exam Study Expert podcast, and I definitely saw a little spike in audience following that. So if you have recently found your way to the Exam Study Expert podcast on Lucy's recommendation, then you're very welcome here. It's great to have you. Cool. So that's enough on the behind-the-scenes stuff for now. If you're interested in more on the backstory, my plans, what's going to be happening with it all, I'll get into all that in a little bonus feature after today's main content. So, to today's main feature, I want to play you as I say, what's the most listened episode from Lucy's podcast, The School Success Formula, which was all about the 3 exam technique mistakes students commonly make. As you'll hear when Lucy podcasts, she tends to direct it at parents, and she talks a lot about GCSE and A-level exams, which are the main exams we sit here in high school in the UK. I do know that most of my listeners are students, and you guys are all around the world, not just in the UK. I also know that it's not a typical student that chooses to tune into a podcast about how to pass exams, and my advice normally tends to skew a bit to the advanced or sophisticated learner. But despite all that, I still think there's some really helpful stuff here for everyone in what Lucy has to say, and I'll be jumping in after each of the 3 points Lucy makes today about exam technique, and I'll offer a little translation or generalisation of my own where needed, and throw in my own little take and some advice for you on the issues. Between what both Lucy and I have to say on the topic, I hope you find some really helpful tips in here today to help you ace your exams. Let's hear from Lucy and dive right into her first tip for us today.
So, the first mistake is thinking you're not an exams person. I've had so many emails over the years from parents saying that their child isn't an exams person. It's true that some people take to exams more easily than others, but this is the same for just about any skill or thing that humans do in life. Some people are naturals, others have to work harder to be good or even adequate at them. The problem is, when you say and keep repeating that you're not an exams person, you're fulfilling a fixed mindset prophecy. Basically, you'll make it come true because you're giving yourself a get-out clause to be bad at exams. Exam technique can be learned. You can get better at it with practice. Just, in the name of all that is good, stop saying you're not an exams person, because this is putting you on the fast track to failure.
If you caught up with Erica's episode on the show last week, you'll know all about what Lucy's talking about here, the idea of growth mindset, the idea that we need to believe we can get better at things with the right kind of training and the right kind of practice. And that being such an important attitude to go into, well, life generally, let alone academic success with. Lucy's absolutely right here. Exam taking is no different. And sure, some people are going to take to the exam experience more naturally than others. Plenty of people I've met over the years have some, let's be fair, some pretty sizable hurdles to overcome. I'll hear things like people freezing up completely when they get into an exam context. But don't despair. It may be a longer road for you than some of your peers. And sure, you may never end up absolutely loving exams. That's not our goal. But we can get you to a better place where you can sit down and succeed and get the results you need when you're in an exam context. But only if you believe that better things are possible for you. Lucy's right. If you have the attitude that it's never going to happen, then that's going to become a self-fulfilling prophecy. I always like to start with the yet game. It may sound a little bit cheesy, but try it. It helps. Just catch yourself saying that negative belief, whatever negative belief it is. In this case, we're talking about the belief that I'm not good at exams, and we want to add the word yet. So make it, I'm not good at exams yet. You're being honest with yourself that, okay, it's not my greatest thing today, but equally honest with yourself that with the right kind of training, the right kind of practice, you could get better at it in future.
So the second exam technique mistake is not knowing what to expect in each exam. When jockeys ride horses in races, they walk the course beforehand so that they know what to expect. Marathon runners train for many hours to get their bodies used to running that distance and learn how to calibrate their physiology to perform their best. Concert violinists run through their pieces in each concert hall before they play to an audience so that they know how their instrument will resonate with the space. An exam is a performance. You need to know how many questions there are and how many marks they're worth so that you can make sure you answer all the questions you need to and leave time to have a go at every one of them. How each question will be marked so you can give the examiner the kind of answer they need to see in order to give you good marks. And what each question is for, as each question on the paper will probably look at a different set of knowledge or skills. To get good marks, you need to know why you're being asked each question. So other things that you need to know about the exam are how long you have in the exam so that you can work out how long to spend on each question and you don't run out of time. And finally, whether you have to answer every question or whether you have choices over which questions to answer. If you can choose, you need to know so that you can choose the questions that suit you best and also prepare for them. There are probably many other reasons why you need to know what to expect in an exam, but all of the ones I've listed here are very important and will make a big difference to the marks you get.
Well, amen to that. And I know a few of these things might sound obvious, but it is so important to make absolutely 100% sure, not 98% sure, 100% sure that you get these basics right. Otherwise, you could miss out on huge swathes of marks. Lucy mentioned that there could be a few other considerations. I'll just throw in another set of considerations that may be relevant to some of my listeners if you are taking computer-based exams. So think about, can you skip questions? Can you mark things to come back to later? Is there a timer? And what does that look like? Or can you bring your own, or watch, for example? Will there be rough paper or a mini whiteboard that you can use to make notes or think on? And then for everyone, no matter what kind of exam you're taking, what are the rules regarding refreshment? Are you allowed water? How do bathroom breaks work? And especially if you're anxious about the exam, try and find out as much as possible about the context, the environment, the circumstances. What's the hall like? Is it a big one, a small one? Are you on your own in your bedroom taking an exam on the computer, or are you in a big hall with everyone else? And if so, can you visit it beforehand? Maybe even peer through the window, as long as there isn't an exam on live, and get a feel for the space? Because the more information you can gather and the more you start to get comfortable with that environment, or at least it not being quite as alien as it otherwise might be, the better and the more comfortable you be on the day. And in terms of all the timing stuff Lucy was talking about, it's really important set of considerations. And I actually have a whole section on this, creating your exam game plan, in my exam technique book, Outsmart Your Exams, in terms of breaking down the available time, being strategic in which sections you work on first, how long to allocate to each section, and so forth. Outsmart Your Exams is linked at the bottom of most of my episodes and is also readily available from Amazon or some other good booksellers. Let's get to Lucy's final tip for us today.
Okay, the third exam technique mistake is failing to plan your answers. So, as the US President Benjamin Franklin is supposed to have said, if you fail to plan, you are planning to fail. This holds true for exam answers, and it's not just long essay-style questions. Even questions worth as little as 4 marks need a plan. These questions clearly don't need a detailed plan. However, if you've got a 4-mark question that asks you to describe and explain 2 factors that make something happen, your plan will look something like this. 1. Factor 1, number 1 description. 2. Factor 1 explanation. 3. Factor 2 description. 4. Factor 2 explanation. So going description, explanation, description, explanation. Laying your answer out clearly like this makes it easy for the examiner to see that you've got the marks, and therefore makes it easier for them to award you the marks. Short questions don't need lots of planning and don't need written plans at all in many cases, but with practice you learn to plan and structure answers well. Longer questions and essays do need more detailed plans to get them right.
Yeah, I think this is great advice. I'm a big fan of taking the time and being generous to plan your answers. even if you don't think you need to. It's a really helpful strategy, I think, and I find it not only helps you come up with higher quality responses, but also counterintuitively it can often help speed you up because you get to focus full brain power on the coming up with the ideas and forming your arguments and remembering the points as a sort of step one when you do the plan. And then two, you don't need to do any of the thinking about what you're going to say in step two. All you need to focus on is writing high quality sentences and paragraphs and producing really high quality writing. And so when you do those two things in sequence and you focus full brain power on one bit and then the other, we come up with a higher quality response overall than if we're trying to basically do everything all in one step. So I hope you've enjoyed today's episode and taken some useful notes on things you can apply to your own exam taking. Just before I sign off today, if you would like to, do stay with me for a few final moments, and I'm going to share a little bit of a backstage update on what I'm planning to do with regards Lucy's legacy of published episodes and articles. I'm actually going to back right up to give you a bit of personal context to all of this. So settle back. It's brief story time. Let me take you back to 2018. It was 6 years ago now at time of recording, when I was first weighing up whether to go all in, to quit my job and dive headfirst into being a full-time coach, speaker, researcher and podcaster in the world of Exam Study Expert. And sidebar, in hindsight, that was definitely one of the best life decisions I've made so far. The journey has not always been easy, and those early couple of years in particular were hard as I was getting established from ground zero, especially amid a global pandemic when exams were being cancelled, which was pretty epically bad timing for someone wanting to help people pass exams. But I just really, really felt I had something to offer, and I stuck with it. And I am now just so grateful every day to have a happy little life doing all things Exam Study Expert, serving some wonderful listeners and readers, and I'm working with some lovely schools and one-on-one coaching clients. Anyway, back to the main story. So we're back in 2018 when I was first pondering whether I wanted to go all in and do this at all. And I was doing some research, as you probably do, on who else was out there doing something similar. And there weren't a lot of others back then, to be honest. There were some scientist outreach initiatives, prominently the Learning Scientists Project. I've been honoured to interview a couple of the learning scientists here on the show over the years since, Dr. Carolina Cooper-Tetzel and Dr. Jana Weinstein-Jones. I really only found a couple of people teaching learning strategy, revision technique, exam prep as their kind of primary thing, at least here in the UK, one of whom has since moved into a slightly different area of focus, looking after younger students, like much younger, like 11, 12 years old, which is not sort of really my area of expertise. And then the other person I came across back in 2018 was Lucy Parsons. And I looked around her staff. She struck me as a really kind soul with a lot of love for the students she served and a genuine passion for helping people thrive in their academic pursuits. And I'd always thought it'd be fun to get to know Lucy a little bit once I'd got Exam Study Expert up and running. I'd kind of write and introduce myself and make friends, and we could hopefully support each other. But, you know, how it is, life happened and I never quite got around to it. So fast forward to earlier this year when I got wind that Lucy was planning to close the doors on her Life More Extraordinary business after 10 years to take her life in a different direction. I looked at the huge amount of work she'd put into her own blog, her podcast, her YouTube channel, her social channels, all that content, literally tens of thousands of hours of work to create it all, and still helping thousands of people every single month. And I just thought it would be just such a shame to see it all disappear into the void. So I reached out to Lucy, we got to know each other a little bit, and I'm happy to say that we quickly found our way to a win-win solution that we were both really excited for, to keep her legacy and her works alive, both to the benefit of her existing followers and hopefully to support the continued health of Exam Study Experts in the future. So what to expect? What's concretely going to happen? Well, my first move concerns the corpus of blog articles she has on her website, Life More Extraordinary. Hundreds of articles with thousands of views every month. Over the next few weeks, I'm gradually going to move over her articles and host them on my main site, examstudyexperts.com. Lucy will still be listed as the author, of course, and because the Exam Study Expert blog runs ads to help us cover our costs, and we have done for many years, we'll be writing Lucy a little bit of a check from time to time for a share of the ad revenue her articles generate. It's not going to be vast amounts of money, but I do think it's important that content creators are treated and rewarded fairly for their work. wherever possible. That's always been really important to me as obviously a content creator myself. So it's a little bit of a win for Lucy, a win for me as it will hopefully grow the blog a little bit, having Lucy as an author there, and a win for our readers as they can continue to access Lucy's helpful advice through the articles she's created. Over on the YouTube channel, Lucy's Life More Extraordinary YouTube channel, she's built a much bigger following than I have with my little Exam Study Expert channel, which is, not surprising, as I've not really focused on video that much outside of my premium courses, except for the odd kind of dabble over the years. So for now, I'm not going to change anything on YouTube, but if I am going to get into video content more in future, which is definitely on the roadmap, I'll probably find a way to use these two channels together to complement each other in some way. So no immediate change on YouTube. What about on the podcast? Well, here on the podcast, the immediate plan is to cross-broadcast a few of my own greatest hits episodes from the Exam Study Expert podcast and release them on Lucy's School Success Formula podcast feed, with the eventual aim to help any of Lucy's listeners find their next favourite show in Exam Study Expert. The long-term plan is probably going to be to shut the School Success Formula as a separate podcast feed, as it's quite pricey to keep two separate podcast channels live, and her listenership has tailed off quite a bit since she announced that she was kind of packing up shop. Though I do plan to keep all of her content and all of her episodes alive via her website and or on the YouTube channel, so people can still find them and benefit from them. So that's just a quick rundown of some of the main things I've got planned. I hope that all makes sense. If you have any questions or feedback on what's going to happen, whether you're a long-time Exam Study Expert listener or a fan of Lucy's work, I'd love to hear what you have to say. Drop me an email at william@examstudyexpert.com. If you're mainly an Exam Study Expert listener, long-time fan of the show, nothing really much is going to change, except for hopefully we'll find a few new listeners that have found their way to the Exam Study Expert family via Lucy's old podcast. So hopefully that'll help us all to grow and help make sure that we can keep the podcast healthy for many, many years to come. So, two final notes. Firstly, if you like Lucy's vibe today, do go and check out her podcast. It's still live for now, The School Success Formula. Browse the archives. I think there's over 160 episodes, lots of lovely stuff there. And it tends to be especially relevant if you are the parent of a UK school student. That's her primary audience. So, UK parents who have children taking their GCSEs or A-levels. Do go and have a look at her archives there. And secondly, especially if you are new to the Exam Study podcast from Lucy's recommendation, I'd just like to signpost how I might be able to help you beyond simply listening to this podcast. So academic coaching and mentoring were a core part of what Lucy and her team offered. And while she's no longer offering this, having closed her business and off doing something else, this is a very similar thing to my own core one-on-one exam success coaching offering, and I've actually been pleased to welcome a good number of new clients myself in recent months to coaching programs who found out about me and what I do through Lucy's referral. So if you yourself are a parent listening and you'd like some support with your child's study habits, revision technique and exam taking strategy, I would be delighted to work with them to help them get consistent, learn faster and ace their exams the smart way. As regular listeners to this show will know very well by now, I've helped many hundreds of students achieve brilliant outcomes in their exams over the past 6 years, with much less overwhelm and overwork along the way. You can learn more about how I work and book a completely free consultation call via examstudyexpert.com/coaching. That'll do it for today. I hope you enjoyed the exam tips, and if you've made it all the way to the end, then I hope you've found it at least somewhat interesting, learning a little bit about what I've got going on backstage here at the show. So thank you once again for listening, and I will look forward to seeing you again very soon. Wishing you all the best in your studies.
If you've got exams coming up, you can now get all of William's favourite tips and tricks to save you time and get you higher grades, all in one handy cheat sheet. Grab your copy at examstudyexpert.com/free tips. Thanks again for listening, and see you soon.